He looked me in the eye on our wedding night and said everything between us was just an act. Then she stepped out behind him and called him honey. That was the moment my heart stopped. But what they didn't know, I was already carrying the secret that would make them both pay, in ways they never saw coming. My name is Ray. This isn't just a story about heartbreak, it's a warning. Because sometimes, the people who claim to love you are the ones setting the trap. Before we dive in, let me know, where are you listening from tonight? Have you ever discovered a lie so big it made you question your whole life? Drop a comment. I read every one. The first thing I remember is the sound of my own laughter echoing off the marble walls of the hotel hallway. It was the kind of laughter people have when they believe the world has finally given them what they deserve. My heels clicked softly on the floor as I walked toward the suite Israel had chosen. The Driskill, the oldest and most romantic hotel in Austin. Everyone told me I was the luckiest woman alive, and for a few hours that night, I let myself believe it. The air smelled faintly of roses and champagne. My dress still shimmered under the light, heavy but beautiful, a symbol of every dream I'd worked for. Israel had been charming all evening, smiling at the photographers, whispering promises about our future, about the children we'd have, the home by the lake. I remember thinking how perfect it felt to be seen, to be chosen. Growing up, love had never looked like this. My parents ran a small grocery in South Austin. We were Mexican-American, proud and tired. Every bill was a battle. My mother used to say, "Mija, marry a good man, not a rich one. But if he's both, thank God twice." I thought I had. I stopped outside the suite, 2 and 17. My hand rested on the brass handle. My heart beat so fast I could hear it in my ears. I was about to walk into the beginning of our forever. The door opened easily. Inside, the lights were dim. I smiled, ready to say something sweet, maybe to tease him for leaving me at the elevator. Then I heard it. "Hey, honey, you're back early." The voice wasn't mine. For a second, I thought I'd walked into the wrong room. My smile froze. I looked up and saw her. A woman sitting on the edge of the bed, legs crossed, wearing one of his shirts. My husband's shirt. Israel didn't move. He just stood there beside her, his tie loose, expression calm, almost rehearsed. "Israel?" My voice cracked. "What is this?" He met my eyes without an ounce of guilt. "Everything between us was just an act, Maura." The words didn't make sense. My head tried to reject them, like a body rejecting poison. "An act?" I whispered. He shrugged, sliding his hands into his pockets. "You were convenient. You looked good on paper." "That's all?" The woman smirked, sipping from a glass of wine on the nightstand. The faint ring of lipstick on the rim burned into my vision. I stood there, still holding the bouquet. The petals brushed my wrist, sticky with perfume and sweat. I wanted to drop it, but my hand wouldn't let go. "I see," I said finally. My voice sounded like someone else's, steady, flat, too calm. Inside, I was falling through air. He sighed, almost bored. "Don't make this dramatic, Maura. You'll thank me one day." Thank him? For what? For turning our vows into a rehearsal? For calling me convenient? My chest tightened, but I didn't cry. I just looked at him, the man who had promised me forever, and realized how well he'd performed. Every smile, every touch, every look had been a script he'd memorized. The woman leaned against him now, her head on his shoulder. She looked at me and said, "You can leave now. He's home." That's when something inside me snapped, but not the way they expected. I didn't shout, I didn't break the glass or demand answers. I simply whispered, "Then you should know. I'm not who you think I am either." They laughed softly, assuming it was denial. Let them. I turned toward the door, still holding my bouquet. The petals started falling one by one, scattering across the carpet like small pieces of goodbye. My reflection caught the light in the mirror. Eyes blank, mouth still, a woman unrecognizable to herself. As I stepped into the hallway, the cool air hit me. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. But I didn't. I took a deep breath and kept walking. The laughter behind the door faded until it was just another noise in a long, sleepless night. People say silence means surrender. They're wrong. Silence can be the sharpest blade of all. I walked past the elevator, through the lobby, out into the night where the air smelled of rain and exhaust. Somewhere inside me, something heavy began to move. Slowly, by the time the sun came up, my secret had a pulse. It whispered through my chest as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my old apartment, the one I'd kept just in case. I never thought I'd actually need it. The silence there felt different now. Not safe, just hollow. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, then again, and again. By the time I reached for it, the screen was already glowing with hundreds of notifications. My wedding photos had hit every news site in Texas, but not the ones with the smiles or the champagne. The headlines read like verdicts. Bride walks out on wedding night. Rumors of mental breakdown behind closed doors. Was it love or delusion? They didn't even need to write my name. Everyone knew. The comments were worse. Strangers debated whether I'd lost it, whether Israel Hale had married beneath his status, whether I'd faked the entire thing for attention. People I didn't know decided who I was before I'd even had coffee. By sunrise, I wasn't a woman. I was a headline. The phone kept ringing. Messages from coworkers, old classmates, even my mother's cousin in San Antonio. Every text said some version of the same thing. I'm so sorry. I saw the news. I didn't reply. I deleted them one by one until only one message remained. It was from my father. Come home when you're ready. I sat there reading those 5 words over and over. My father never sent long messages. He was a man of work, not words. But I could feel the quiet love buried in them, the kind that doesn't ask, doesn't pity, just waits. The TV in the background switched to the local morning show. And there he was, Israel, sitting on a studio couch, his voice calm, his expression rehearsed. He said I'd been struggling emotionally, that he hoped I'd get the help I needed. He turned my humiliation into compassion for himself. My throat burned, but I didn't cry. Instead, I turned the TV off and walked to my desk. The sunlight through the blinds painted stripes across my arms. The city outside was already moving on, people heading to work, sipping coffee, chasing buses. My world had stopped, but theirs hadn't. I opened my laptop, the familiar hum filling the room. In the drawer beside it sat a small black recorder, the kind professors use for interviews. It was left over from my graduate thesis. I'd grabbed it out of habit last night, before everything fell apart. I pressed play. The sound crackled at first. Then came his voice, clear and cold. Everything between us was just an act. Then mine, quieter. Good. Then you won't miss the audience. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Hearing it again made it real. Every word, every pause, every bit of contempt he'd tried to hide was trapped inside that little device. I whispered, "Proof doesn't heal the wound, but it keeps the wound honest." I stared at the recorder for a long time, tracing its edges with my thumb. The click it made when stopping felt final, like punctuation at the end of a lie. That sound, the click, anchored me, reminded me I wasn't crazy. Instead of rushing online to defend myself, I opened a folder on my desktop and started documenting. Screenshots of the headlines, timestamps from the news, notes about what I'd said, what he'd said, who had been there. I spoke softly into my phone, recording my own memory of the night while it was still fresh. "I don't know what this will become," I said aloud, "but I know I'm not done yet." Hours passed like minutes. The light shifted from gold to gray. Somewhere between the stillness and the sound of traffic below, I realized what I was doing. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was building a record. He had turned me into a story, one I didn't write, but I still knew how to hold a pen. Before I shut my laptop, I looked at the camera on the screen and met my own reflection. My hair was a mess, my eyes swollen, but my voice came out steady. He turned me into a story, I whispered. Now, I'll finish it. The city outside was fading into dusk when I finally stood, stretching my stiff shoulders. I walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside, and watched the cars pass below. Somewhere out there, Israel was probably having dinner with that woman, pretending he hadn't just rewritten my life for ratings. But he wasn't the only one with a script. I glanced back at the recorder on my desk. Its red light blinked once before going dark, like it was waiting for the next chapter to begin. And before I could strike, the woman from that night found me first. The message came just after noon. Short, plain, almost polite. We need to talk. It's not what you think. The number wasn't saved, but I knew exactly who it was. I stared at the screen for a long time, my thumb hovering over delete. My stomach twisted at the thought of seeing her, the woman from that night. But curiosity has a cruel way of sounding like courage. I texted back. Where? An hour later, I was sitting at a small cafe near the courthouse, the kind of place where lawyers and clerks grabbed lunch between trials, where everything smelled like burnt espresso and exhaustion. Outside, life kept moving. Inside, mine was about to tilt again. I sat near the window, my hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. Sunlight hit the glass just right, splitting into tiny reflections on the table. I thought about how ordinary it all looked. People laughing, a barista calling out orders, a man in a suit checking his watch. The world didn't care that mine had fallen apart. Then the door opened and she walked in. Meredith. She looked different, smaller somehow. No makeup, no sharp edges. Just a pale face and eyes that had seen too much. She spotted me immediately and approached with hesitant steps, as if unsure whether I'd throw the mug or just walk out. Maura, she said softly. I nodded. You found me. I didn't come to fight, she said quickly, sliding into the seat across from me. I didn't know he'd marry you. He told me you were his investor. Investor. The word felt like a slap. I didn't answer. I wanted to see how far her story would go. She took a deep breath, pulled a folder from her bag, and laid it between us. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it toward me. You need to see this. Inside were printed contracts, signatures, and bank transfers. My name was on every single page, neat, consistent, official. My signature. Except I'd never signed any of them. My throat went dry. Where did you get this? From his office, she whispered. After you left the hotel, he panicked. I went there that night and his desk was a mess. I found copies. He used your name to finalize an investment overseas. Millions. My pulse pounded in my ears. He forged my signature? No. Worse. She looked up at me with guilt in her eyes. He tricked you into signing. He said they were prenuptial documents, routine, legal formalities before the wedding, but they weren't. He used your American citizenship and clean record to seal the deal. You were the only one he could use. I closed the folder, trying to breathe. The room felt smaller, the noise sharper. Everything I'd ignored, the quick proposal, the pressure to sign, the urgency in his voice, clicked into place like pieces of a cruel puzzle. He said you wouldn't ask questions, she murmured. That you'd be grateful. He told me that night you were simple. But he lied to me too. I met her eyes. For the first time, she looked like a victim, not a rival. You were part of it, I said quietly. She nodded, tears gathering but never falling. He said I was helping him build something honest. He said he loved me, but it was all a lie. He was setting me up to take the fall if you ever found out. For a long moment, we just sat there. Two women who'd believed in the same man, the same story, the same illusion. I finally spoke. It wasn't just my heart he used, it was my name. She covered her face with both hands. I'm sorry, Mara. I swear I didn't know. I leaned back, staring out the window. The courthouse across the street gleamed in the sunlight. Clean lines, tall glass, justice made to look expensive. He thought I'd hide, I said slowly. He thought shame would silence me. I turned back to her. He was wrong. When I said it, something shifted between us. The pity in her eyes turned into understanding. She hesitated, then whispered, "If you go after him, I'll help you." I studied her for a moment. She wasn't lying. Her voice was too tired for lies. "We won't go after him," I said at last. "We'll go after what he built on our backs." She blinked. "You mean?" "I mean every contract, every deal, every dollar. He built it with stolen names and stolen trust. It's time to take it apart." She nodded slowly, like someone stepping onto thin ice but deciding it was worth the risk. We didn't shake hands, but something unspoken passed between us. A fragile alliance born from the same betrayal. After she left, I sat alone for a while, the folder still on the table. I could smell her perfume faintly, the same one from that night. My hands shook as I tucked the papers into my bag. Outside, the sky had turned gold, the light fading behind the courthouse roof. I thought of all the times I'd studied human behavior for my research, analyzing deceit and trust as if they were just theories on a page. But now it was my life, my data, my experiment in survival. He built an empire on deception, I whispered to myself. But he forgot. I study truth for a living. That night, I called a lawyer, and the first thing he said made my blood run cold. When I called Lyle Ferris that night, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'd found his number through a colleague from my teaching days, a man who specialized in corporate fraud, quiet but relentless. I half expected him to dismiss my story as something from a bad TV show, but when I finished explaining, there was a pause on the line long enough to make my heart stop. "Mora," he finally said, "what Israel did isn't just betrayal. It's a federal crime." The next afternoon, I walked into his downtown office. It was one of those restored brick buildings that smelled of espresso and legal paper, shelves lined with thick binders, degrees framed neatly behind his desk. Lyle Ferris didn't look like the kind of man who smiled often, and he didn't. He gestured for me to sit, then began flipping through the folder Meredith had given me. He studied every page, murmuring to himself. I watched the reflection of the city lights glint across his glasses. After several minutes, he closed the folder gently, the way a surgeon might close a file after a difficult diagnosis. "He didn't just use you for a deal," he said. "He made you his co-signer on a fraud." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. "Co-signer?" He nodded. "You were legally bound to one of his investment subsidiaries. Your signature, real by the way, authorized the transfer of several $1 million overseas. It's layered through shell companies, but the trail is clear." The air in the room thinned. I leaned forward. "So he used me as a front?" "Yes. You were the face that legitimized it all. He forged some follow-up documents, but the initial authorization came from you." I felt my chest tighten. My own handwriting, my own trust, had become the perfect disguise. Lyle's tone sharpened. "If you act first, you can freeze the assets. If you don't, he'll drain everything and disappear. You might end up holding the liability for his crimes." I swallowed hard. "How long do I have?" 72 hours. Maybe less, depending on how fast he moves. He handed me a pen. "Start signing your name to save yourself, Mora. Not to lose yourself again." When I left the office, the sky had already turned amber. Downtown buzzed with life. People leaving work, cars honking, laughter spilling from bars. I stood still on the sidewalk, the folder clutched to my chest. Everyone else was heading home. I was heading into a war. At home that evening, I set the folder on the kitchen table beside the recorder. The apartment felt too quiet, the kind of silence that follows a storm before the next one begins. I pressed play again, hearing his voice fill the room. Everything between us was just an act. This time, I didn't flinch. I listened to the arrogance dripping from every word. He had built an entire lie and expected me to play my part forever. He used my trust as currency, I whispered. My gaze fell on the wedding ring sitting by the sink. It caught the light just enough to mock me. I picked it up, rolled it between my fingers, then set it down with a dull clink. You wanted a signature, Israel, I said quietly. You'll get one. Just not the kind you expected. The night stretched long, but I didn't rest. I began gathering everything I had: the voice recording, the contracts with mismatched handwriting, screenshots, messages, the date he proposed, the date the funds moved. Each piece felt like reclaiming a fragment of myself. I opened a spreadsheet and labeled it Truth. Underneath, I typed, Objective, undo every move he made, one signature at a time. My hands trembled, but not from fear. It was adrenaline, the same kind that pushes a person out of the wreckage, not because they're unhurt, but because survival demands motion. Around midnight, I stepped out onto the balcony. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain and city dust. From up there, the skyline looked almost kind, 1,000 lights blinking like distant promises. They see the ring, I murmured to myself, not the bruise beneath it. They see the smile, not the silence behind it. I wrapped my arms around myself, letting the night settle over my shoulders like a heavy coat. When someone breaks you, you don't rebuild the same, I whispered. You rebuild sharper. It was strange, how calm I felt now, not peaceful but clear. I knew what needed to be done. The woman I'd been before would have begged for closure. The one standing here wanted consequences. As I turned back inside, my phone buzzed with a message from Lyle. We'll need to act within 72 hours. Don't alert him. Just prepare. I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back, Understood. I walked to the window again, the city lights reflecting in the glass. 3 days, I whispered. He built his empire in 3 years. Let's see how it survives 3 days. But by morning, he already knew what I was planning. By morning, the sunlight spilling across my bedroom floor felt colder than usual. I reached for my phone, still half asleep, and saw a string of notifications flashing one after another. My bank app, my email, my credit card company. Each message carried the same phrase: account access restricted due to investigation. I sat up straight. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. Some glitch. But then a new email appeared, the subject line bold and sterile. Fraud claim initiated by spouse, Israel Grant. My heart dropped. I called the bank immediately, pacing across the apartment. The woman on the other end had that customer service calm that only made things worse. I'm sorry, Ms. Alvarez, she said softly. Your husband filed a report last night, claiming suspicious transactions under your name. Until the matter is resolved, all linked accounts will remain under temporary hold. My husband? I repeated, almost laughing. He's the one who... But I stopped myself. She wasn't the enemy. I understand, I managed. Can I at least access my checking account? I'm afraid not. When the call ended, I tried my debit card, declined. Then my credit card, declined again. The world tilted a little. Downstairs, at the corner cafe, I tried to pay for coffee. The barista glanced at the screen, then back at me, embarrassed. Ma'am? It says insufficient funds. The people in line behind me shuffled impatiently. I forced a smile, muttered, Forget it, and walked out empty-handed. The humiliation burned deeper than fear. He hadn't just stolen my life. He'd erased my ability to survive. By the time I reached Lyle's office, I was shaking. I dropped the printed notice on his desk like it was radioactive. "He got there first," I said through clenched teeth. Lyle scanned the papers, jaw tightening. "This man's not impulsive," he said. "He's strategic. He's building a case to make you look unhinged." "He already did," I muttered. "The media thinks I'm unstable. Now he's making sure the banks do too." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "We'll file a counterclaim for fraudulent reporting, but it'll take time, maybe weeks." "By then he'll have emptied everything," I said. He looked at me quietly, the kind of silence that confirmed I was right. "You're fighting a man with influence, Maura, but he's also sloppy. Men like him always leave fingerprints, just not the kind police see." I left his office around noon, the Austin heat pressing down like judgment. My phone buzzed. I hoped it was my father checking in. It wasn't. It was Meredith. A single text. "We need to talk." Relief washed over me. Finally, someone on my side. I typed, "Where are you?" Then nothing. Hours passed. I called. No answer. By late afternoon, her number went straight to voicemail. That night, just before midnight, a new message appeared from her phone. "Don't contact me again. It's over." Something in my chest went cold. The phrasing didn't sound like her, not the woman who'd been trembling across from me in that cafe, holding proof of Israel's deceit. "When people vanish right after crossing a man like him," I whispered to the empty room, "it's not because they want peace. It's because they were forced into it." The apartment felt smaller than ever. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger, someone trapped between fury and exhaustion. I needed control, even a fragment of it. So I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. For the first time since the wedding, I recorded myself. "My name is Maura Alvarez," I began, voice unsteady but clear. "If anything happens to me, this is my record. I am not the woman they describe on TV. I am not unstable. I was deceived, and I can prove it." I paused, staring into my own eyes on the screen. "You're not the victim anymore," I whispered. "You're the witness." I set the phone down and started building a timeline. Screenshots, timestamps, voice memos, scanned documents. Every tiny detail became a piece of armor. The process steadied me. "He underestimated the one thing I still had," I said softly to the quiet room. "The truth. And I'll make him choke on it." Sometime past midnight, the glow of the laptop screen became my only light. I uploaded everything, recordings, contracts, images, to a secure cloud drive. I renamed the folder Evidence, Do Not Delete. Just as I was about to close the lid, a soft ping interrupted the silence. A new email slid into my inbox. Subject line, "I know what he did." Sender, unknown. My pulse quickened. I clicked it open. No message. No name. Just a single address written in plain text. I stared at it, the cursor blinking beside the last word like a heartbeat. The message had no name, I whispered. Only an address. The address pulsed in my mind as I drove through the empty streets of Austin, my headlights slicing through the night like searchlights over a battlefield. I hadn't told anyone where I was going, not even Lyle. Something about the email felt off, but it also felt like a hand reaching through the fog, a silent invitation to the other side of the truth. The GPS announced I'd arrived. Ahead of me stood a squat, weathered warehouse by the river. The building leaned slightly, as if exhausted by secrets. The surrounding lot was silent, except for the creak of a chain-link fence swaying in the breeze. I parked and stepped out, gravel crunching beneath my shoes. Every step echoed louder than the last. Inside, the scent of rust and damp wood clung to the air. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting long streaks across the concrete floor. I kept my breath steady and followed the only light I saw, a single bulb flickering weakly in the far corner. There, sitting on a dust-covered table, was a manila envelope. My name was scribbled across it in black marker. I didn't move at first. My eyes scanned the room, expecting someone, anyone, to step from the shadows, but the warehouse remained still, heavy with waiting. I picked up the envelope with hesitant fingers and opened it. Inside were documents, dozens, bank statements, wire transfers, photos. Israel's name appeared over and over, but the accounts weren't in Texas. They were international: Zurich, the Caymans, Luxembourg. Attached to the last page was a photo. Israel in a navy blazer, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize, balding, round-faced, in front of a glass office labeled Westbridge Financial Consultants. Behind them, another man stood with sunglasses and a briefcase. A sticky note was taped across the bottom. 6 words, blocky and unforgiving. "He's laundering through you. Wake up." My knees nearly gave. I crouched by the table, my breath shallow. "He used my life as camouflage," I whispered. My job, my name, my clean financial record, it had all been a mask for his rot. I swallowed back the bile rising in my throat and began slipping the papers back into the envelope. That's when I saw it, a tiny red light blinking behind a crate to my left. I stepped closer. There, partially hidden under some tarps, was a small surveillance camera. Not security footage. This one was pointed directly at me. A wave of dread spread across my skin like ice. I was being recorded, not just observed, documented. Someone had planned this. They knew I'd come. This wasn't a gift. It was bait. I scanned the walls again, the ceiling, the corners, trying to find a second camera, a sign of movement, anything. But the shadows just stared back. I grabbed the envelope, backed away slowly, and moved toward the exit, keeping my movements smooth. Panic wanted to sprint, but instinct knew better. Whoever had lured me here might still be watching. Or worse, waiting outside. When I reached my car, I got in, locked the doors, and didn't breathe until the engine roared to life. Driving back through the city, I didn't turn on the radio. I let silence stretch. My thoughts unraveled slowly, careful not to snap. He was trying to frame me. That much was clear. He wanted me looking like the thief, wandering into warehouses, carrying evidence no one could trace but me. I was being led into a trap, and the terrifying part was, it almost worked. But what he didn't realize was that fear has an expiration date. Mine had just passed. Back at my apartment, I didn't go straight to bed. I showered, dried my hair, made tea, anything to slow my pulse. Then I unlocked the safe tucked behind my bookshelf and placed the envelope inside. That's when my phone lit up. No name, no contact, just a text message. "Nice warehouse choice. Sleep tight, Mrs. Hale." I stood frozen. The words blurred, not because I was afraid, but because I understood now. He wasn't scared of being exposed. He was daring me to try. When the sun rose over Austin, I was already standing outside the local news station, gripping a file so tightly the edges left small dents in my palm. I hadn't slept, but the exhaustion was buried under something sharper. Clarity. Israel thrived in shadows. I'd learned that the hard way, but I wasn't going to meet him there. He wanted war? I'd bring the battlefield into the daylight. Renee Valdez met me in the parking lot. She was one of the last people I trusted from my former life, a tenacious journalist with a quiet fire behind her eyes. We didn't hug. We didn't smile. She took one look at my face and opened her car door without a word. We sat in the front seat while the city woke up around us. I handed her a flash drive, the envelope from the warehouse, and a printed transcript of the confession recording. You run it, but keep my name out. For now. She glanced through the documents, lips tightening. This isn't just corporate fraud. This is federal. It could blow back on you, Maura. I know. Are you sure you want this aired? I looked her square in the eye. It already ruined me. Let's see who survives the truth. That night, KXTX aired the segment as a breaking exclusive. They didn't name me, but the details were unmistakable. The anchor's voice read aloud financial figures, offshore banks, falsified contracts. Surveillance images of Israel walking into the brokerage building filled the screen. The tone was clinical, but I saw the fire catching beneath the calm. And then, everything accelerated. By morning, Israel had called his own press conference. He stood behind a podium, framed by American flags and loyal employees. I watched the live stream on my phone in the kitchen, coffee untouched beside me. My heart is broken, he said, voice trembling on cue. The woman I trusted, she betrayed me. She forged my name. She stole from our joint accounts. And when I confronted her, she disappeared. The lies were like acid, smooth, burning, calculated. Then came the forged document. He held it up as the cameras clicked, a doctored statement showing transfers in my name, with signatures that mimicked mine just enough to confuse the casual eye. Within hours, the tide turned. My inbox filled with hate mail. People called me a scammer, a gold digger, a liar. Comments on the news post were brutal. Some of my old students even messaged, asking if the rumors were true. Lyle called me at noon. Maura, you need to get out of the spotlight. Let it blow over. He's winning the optics. I stared at the window, watching the world move outside like nothing was crumbling. Disappear is what he wants, I said. I'm done disappearing. I reached for the USB marked Real Witness Footage. It was time. Later that afternoon, I walked up the courthouse steps. The news had leaked I'd be filing a civil injunction, and the media showed up in droves. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't wear black. I wore the same simple white blouse I had worn when I defended my thesis in grad school. It reminded me who I was before him. Microphones were shoved into my face. Flashes went off. My name echoed through the crowd like a chant, some supportive, most accusatory. I stepped to the center of the landing, took out the USB, held it high. You want to know who forged the signatures? I said, voice steady. Watch this. I handed the drive to the bailiff standing at the top stair. His brow raised slightly, but he nodded. Then I turned back to the cameras. I won't give a speech, but I'll leave you with this. Sometimes when people try to bury you, they forget you're a seed. Silence. And then murmurs. Someone clapped. Another shouted my name. I walked away before it turned into chaos. In the car, my hands trembled, but not from fear. From the sheer weight of all of it. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had peeled one of his hands off my throat. Back home, I kicked off my shoes and dropped onto the couch. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You think you've won? You still don't know what's missing. I stared at the message. Something wasn't over. And when I found out what was missing, I couldn't breathe. Sleep never came. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling while the unknown message played on repeat in my mind. You still don't know what's missing. At 6:15 a.m., I stood outside a nondescript brick office near Congress Avenue, holding a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. I wasn't here for caffeine. I was here for the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Detective Avery Quinn had been a background name in Israel's world. Former federal investigator. Quiet. Clean reputation. He met me at the door and led me to a private back room without saying much. He slid a sealed folder across the table like it weighed 100 pounds. Before you married him, he said, Israel already had a second life. And another name. I didn't move right away. My fingers hovered over the clasp, then finally opened it. Inside was a certified copy of a marriage certificate from 8 years ago. Israel Grant Hale and Meredith Stone. And right beneath it, a birth record. A boy. 5 years old. I didn't know if I stopped breathing or just forgot how. "There's more," Avery said, voice low. "An offshore trust set up in the child's name, funded using a signature that appears to be yours. Not Israel's, yours." He paused. "He used you again, Maura. Even before you met. He forged your name to create legitimacy and tied you to the child's future in a way that would make you complicit." I stood up, but the room didn't come with me. I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. By 9 o'clock, I was behind the wheel, driving on autopilot toward the place I once believed held my future. Israel's estate sat behind rusted iron gates and a long, cracked driveway. The hedges were overgrown. The world had moved on. But inside those walls, the rot still whispered. I parked just outside the fence, climbed over a break in the chain, and made my way up the gravel path. The side entrance near the garage still stuck when I pushed it. The air inside was stale, perfume and something dead underneath. I walked through the front hallway like a ghost retracing steps I never fully understood. The study was where he'd hung our love letters, fake declarations of affection framed in glass. I pulled one off the wall. Behind it, taped to the back, was a folded receipt, and another behind the next frame, and another. They weren't letters, they were logs, proof, travel documents, shipping manifests. He hadn't courted me. He had documented me. The room spun. I stumbled back, clutching the edge of the desk. Alone in my car again, I broke. Not loud, just quiet unraveling. I gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me in this world. "He made me believe I was part of his story," I whispered. "I was just a disguise." Then a memory returned. My father years ago telling me, "Even lies need witnesses to stay alive." That line burned through the fog. I wasn't here to collapse. I was here to testify. By 1:30 p.m., I stood outside the Travis County Courthouse, USB in one hand, folder in the other. My lawyer walked beside me, saying something about procedures I didn't catch. My eyes were fixed ahead, on the man sitting inside that courtroom. When I entered, Israel barely looked up. His smirk was mechanical now, stretched thin. His lawyer stood and began a monologue about privacy invasions and fabricated attacks. I didn't hear it. I was staring at the one document that mattered now. When it was my turn, I stood. My voice didn't shake. "This document," I said, holding up the birth certificate, "lists Israel Grant Hale as the father of a child born 5 years ago. It also lists his wife at the time, Meredith Stone." Gasps. Movement. "Except," I continued, "he also filed marriage documents under another name, mine, while using forged records to tie me to the trust he set up for that same child." The judge asked for order. I didn't stop. "You want to talk about fraud? Start with the names. Start with the families." And then Meredith walked in. Quiet, pale, but standing. Her eyes found mine. Neither of us smiled. We didn't have to. That moment, 2 women, 2 truths, broke whatever was left of Israel's illusion. By sunset, his assets were frozen. His face disappeared from the company website. His name trended online next to the word criminal. Outside the courthouse, the clouds broke into rain. I didn't run. I let it fall. For once, it wasn't washing me away. It was washing me clean. The wind tapped gently against the window, and for the first time in years, I didn't flinch. 3 years had passed since the courtroom, since the warehouse, Since the storm I thought would swallow me whole, I'd carved a new life from the debris of the old one, brick by careful brick. My mornings were quiet now, coffee brewed on a timer. Sunlight stretched across my desk in golden stripes. On the wall behind me hung a framed photo of my father, his smile steady as ever, like a compass I still used when decisions got too heavy. In front of me sat a pile of intake forms, women from across the country reaching out to the nonprofit I'd founded. They were all versions of me at some point, not just broken by a man's lies, but by the silence that followed. I learned that silence doesn't heal, I'd told a reporter once. Action does. And then came the knock. It was soft, hesitant. Not the kind that demanded attention, but the kind that carried something fragile behind it. I rose slowly and peered through the frosted glass. A young woman stood on the porch, barely out of her teens, clutching something to her chest. When I opened the door, she looked up with eyes I recognized, not because I'd seen them before, but because I'd seen them in someone else, someone I never wanted to think of again. "My name is Lydia," she said, voice trembling. "Lydia Hale." I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. She extended an envelope toward me. Her hand shook. "He passed away a month ago. He told me to find you. Said you were the only one who ever saw the real him." The words scraped against every scar I'd worked so hard to heal. I stepped aside and gestured her in, saying nothing. We sat in my home office, the space that once felt like a war room, now a quiet sanctuary. She looked around, as if absorbing the life I'd built, and I could see the questions in her eyes, though she didn't ask them. The envelope she placed on the table was aged, the corners worn. And the handwriting on the front stopped me. It was the same he used on our wedding invitations. Inside, a short note. "You were right. Love isn't an act. You just met the wrong actor. I'm sorry." Underneath the note was a check, made out to my nonprofit. The amount wasn't grand, but it was everything he had left, liquidated before he died. The final curtain call, I guessed. Tears pricked my eyes, not out of forgiveness. That wasn't what this was. It was release. "Some debts," I said aloud, "can't be paid with money, only with truth." Lydia nodded, eyes still fixed on the desk. "I didn't know about you, not until the end. I think he wanted you to know that he did love you, in his way." I stood, unsure of what I felt. Anger, closure, something in between. That afternoon I drove to the cemetery, alone. No umbrella, no flowers, just the same envelope in my coat pocket. I stood in front of the headstone, simple and polished, and placed the envelope on the stone. Inside was my own note. "I forgive you. Not for you. For me." As I turned to leave, I saw Lydia watching from the tree line. She didn't speak until I reached her. "Thank you," she said, "for not hating him completely." "I did," I answered quietly. "But hate doesn't keep you warm. Forgiveness does." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the river, I walked along the same path where I once found the warehouse, the place where the unraveling had begun. The wind carried the scent of rain again, but this time it didn't smell like warning. It smelled like peace. "Betrayal broke me once," I whispered, "but forgiveness rebuilt me stronger." And as the sky faded into twilight, I remembered every envelope, the first that shattered my world and the last that closed the chapter. The first envelope destroyed my life. The last one set it free.